Hello. Thank you for joining me. God bless you. Let's begin our time together, recalling that loves each of us beyond our imaginings. When we say, God bless you, to one another, we remember that God loves you and me. This simple blessing invites us to keep our words and attitudes loving, kind, and wise. As I record this on Thursday afternoon, November 5th, life seems in a spin. We have lived with COVID-19 since March, 8 months. As time passes and we try to keep one another healthy and news continues to be published about the virus, many of us are confused, frightened, and perhaps feeling helpless. Some of us may be living with mental health issues we never anticipated facing. Others are moved to anger and frustration with the experts, those giving advice and creating public health regulations, and then those who do not agree with our way of responding to this pandemic. It's challenging to live in the now and not move into the future, a future that may look very different from the one we anticipated even 9 months ago. We want the pandemic to end and our futures secured. We do not know what it will look like, and it is hard to live with so much uncertainty in the present and the future. In addition, the U.S. election has been top of mind for many months. Even now, 2 days after the November 3rd election, the outcome is uncertain. As I speak with you, it looks as if former Vice President Biden has 264 Electoral College votes and President Trump has 214. There are still many uncounted mail-in ballots, several states where the results are too close to call, and Mr. Trump is saying many things about the election and his opponent to unsettle the electorate and to foment division and create tension. Some would say hatred. Mr. Biden is urging patience and asking people to wait until all the ballots are counted before claiming victory or conceding. Many of us are wondering how the popular vote could possibly be so close. How can such a significant number of Americans think the past 4 years and the remarks and actions taken by the president be worthy of another term? I ask myself this question. I have family members in the U.S. who voted for Biden and family members who voted for Trump. And if you sat down and had coffee with them, you may not be able to tell who's who. All of them are good people. They're good spouses. They're active in their respective churches. They're excellent parents and grandparents. They're reputable employers and honest employees. They care for one another and for folks in the larger community. They volunteer and they offer their time, talent, and resources for many and varied causes. They hold many of the values that many of us hold dear, and they have a different view of what constitutes the best leader of the United States at this point in time. I have one relative who is currently legal counsel for the ACLU at the state level, and another who ran for office at the local level of on the Republican ticket a couple of years ago. And it just so happens I love both women very much. This is really messy. This is life. I can't fix this. And our readings speak of wisdom. How do the wise respond to our times? In today's gospel, Matthew shares a parable Jesus told of 10 women who wait for the bridegroom, light their lamps when he arrives, and escorts the bridegroom to the wedding banquet. In the parable, the wise women bring flasks of oil with them. The foolish do not. How many times have I showed up for something less than 100% prepared for all eventualities? How did others react? And if someone asks to borrow something, am I able to share? What about the person who opened the shop after midnight to the foolish women so they could buy oil? Was that person kind? Did they say something like, "No worries, we have lots of oil, here you go"? Or were they rude at being bothered so late at night and nasty to the women? And what about the bridegroom? Sure, they weren't ready when he came, and he and the 5 wise women went ahead to the wedding banquet. But when the 5 foolish women got their act together, the door was shut, and the bridegroom even said to them, "I do not know you." Seems to be a bit harsh for a misstep over some oil. Like life, this parable and all the stories and relationships in it are very messy. What is the wisdom in it for us today? I have to say, this messiness is often reflected in my own life, and sometimes I'm the author of it. Sometimes I'm foolish, and once in a while I'm wise. Sometimes I'm ready to shut the door on something a person asks of me, or even on the person. My friend Tom and I do some work together every Friday afternoon. This activity happens over Zoom, and both of us help coordinate it with a few other folks. Between 25 and 40 folks join us most Friday afternoons. Many Friday afternoons, shortly before we're to start, Tom emails asking for the Zoom link to the gathering. Now, we have had the same Zoom link for months, and he loses it. His computer eats it. Something happens, and he doesn't know where it is or how to find it. Sometimes I have a bit of grace and just send the link. And sometimes I roll my eyes and say, why can't he keep track of this? How can he be so gifted in so many ways and so incapable of this simple thing? I really react before sending the link. The thing is, Tom stays the same. He doesn't go all commando or mea culpa about losing the link. He just emails, says he doesn't have it, and asks for it. It's me that makes it messy. And just offering the link without any crazy energy another time. This is a pretty silly example, and it helps me to remember how life can be messy, even over really little simple things. When we are faced with bigger issues, how do we respond with grace and wisdom? When is enough enough? When does God call me to respond with love and kindness? You got this. God is with us at all times and always calls us to respond with love and kindness. Let me tell you a story about my friend Jerry. He is a man who lives in a group home, and some years ago he lived with Paul. Paul didn't want to be living in the group home and was rather unpleasant to the folks he lived with most days. Paul got sick and had to have IV antibiotics for many weeks. He was to stay at home, rest, and keep his room as clean as possible because he was fighting a very serious infection. Paul had some mobility issues and could not really keep his room as clean as recommended. Jerry went in every day and cleaned Paul's room. Sometimes he cleaned it twice a day. No one asked Jerry to do this. Paul didn't ask. Paul didn't thank Jerry most of the time. At one point, I asked Jerry how he continued to do this cleaning every day for 6 weeks, when Paul seldom said thank you, and sometimes was rather grouchy with him. Jerry looked at me and he said, he needed his room to be clean to get better. That's it. That's all. Paul needed it. What a loving and kind response. Jerry is such a much more wise and compassionate person than I am. Wisdom sits at the gate and waits for us. She is available. God is with us at all times. We don't know the day nor the hour when we will be called to respond with all the gifts God has given us. Let us be watchful. Let us be responsive, using all the love God has given us to be present to others, especially to those we see as very different from ourselves. Gandhi said, "When I despair, I remember that all through history, the way of truth and love have always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they seem invincible, but in the end, they always fail. Think of it, always." that truth and love have always won. God bless you. Thank you for joining me.